What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Weisz.
Dr. Jeremy Weisz here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Eric Becker of Millimatch. And before I introduce Eric formally, I always like to point out other episodes of the podcast people should check out. And by the way, with Eric's company, I personally have never seen anything on the market like it. So I'm excited to talk about it. And since we're talking SaaS, some other cool SaaS companies I've had on the podcast. I had the founder of Zapier on, which was great. Pipedrive. I think I had them when they were, 10,000 customers. Now they're over 100,000 customers. Aweber, ActiveCampaign, and many more. So check those episodes out on InspiredInsider.com. And this episode is brought to you by Rise25. At Rise25, we help businesses give to and connect to your Dream 100 relationships. And how do we do that? We actually help you run your podcast. We are an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do accountability, strategy, and full execution. And, for me, Eric, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and profile them and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com and email us. We're happy to answer them. I'm excited to introduce, and a big shout out to Tim Garabrandt, who is the Chief Strategy Officer, who introduced Eric and I. So thanks, Tim. We appreciate you. Eric Becker is the CEO and founder of Millimatch. And I was saying, with any company, Eric, you know this, people are the integral capital asset of any organization, right? Impacting the working culture, client success, the value of the business. And when something's that important, you need to use an objective measurement tool to make the right decisions at the right time and get the right people on board, right? And Millimatch, I've never seen anything like this, actually, Eric. So I'm excited for you to walk through it. Millimatch provides rapid data-driven intelligence for fast and effective human capital risk management. So Eric, thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Tell a little bit more about Millimatch and what you do.
Sure. I will tell you at its core is that Millimatch measures behavior. Behavior, not in the sense of personality. Personality, you measure personality once and that's your personality. We measure behavior, but we measure it relevant to something. And when I say to something, to a role, a position, a team, a culture, something very specific. Behavior is dynamic, but we find it valuable and our clients find it valuable because it's also predictable too. And not only that, but behavior changes. It changes with inside influences. And I'm going to speak about an organization, a company, but behavior changes with inside influences and outside influences also. So I can get into the actual science that I'm not the inventor of the science. Our founder of the technology, Manu Rahani, absolutely genius person. He is the one that perfected the technology over a number of years. And the science is called cognitive NLP. So the science has been around for a while. Manu Rahani just took it to 10 levels above and deriving behavior as measured by 24 attributes from written text. So that's the special part about Millimatch, is that we all write subconsciously, and our algorithms that we have patented, the technology can derive and measure objectively 24 behavioral attributes just from open-ended written text.
Interesting. So when I look at your website, you've had users such as Facebook, JP Morgan, Zappos, LinkedIn, and many more. So if a company's like, how does this work? I want to start using it. You mentioned how do you deploy it within a company?
Well, it's basically this. So written text, those companies that you just mentioned, that was Manu Rahani's work. That was the written text that was used was derived from emails. So various projects looking at culture, looking at behavior, and also utilizing it in forensics within a company. When I started Millimatch, we use it in the most common form, which is question and answers. And what we have perfected over the years is that our questions are unbiased, innocuous. Tell us a time in your life, somebody that inspired you. So from that, and it's usually 5 questions, just 5 open-ended questions. And the value of it is not from the answer itself. It's what's underneath it. And we like to say it's not what you write, it's how you write. That we look at what's the underlying meaning from that. And the questions are not just 5 general questions that come off the top of your head. There's a methodology to it, is that the questions are relevant to what we're measuring. So the fit into a specific culture, a role, a position. But we also place the person in a past state, a present state, and a future orientation to what we're measuring. I will tell you this, is that we've interviewed so many people that have taken it. They don't even know that they're being assessed. It just looks like, these are questions that somebody just wants to know more about. They find it fun. But as opposed to the general employee surveys that you receive, which is on a Likert scale, how do you like your boss, 1 to 10? How do you like your company? Least likely, most likely, and so forth. People are suspicious of those things, but not with Millimatch, just with five questions.
So what are some of the use cases, Eric? So like I could see it. You mentioned hiring, right? So you send out the questions, people respond back, and then your software kind of works its magic. And then, but also from a culture, internal perspective, there's use cases too.
Yeah. So we started out Millimatch in 2019, and it was primarily a recruiting tool that we were utilizing it for, particularly in the in-home care business for caregivers. Okay. And high attrition rates. So we deployed Millimatch and finding those people that really wanted to be a caregiver, something more than a job. And it was used during the application process, kind of a self-selecting tool. We want to get to know more about you apart from your previous history. And so we'd ask them five questions that were part of this. Why do you want to be a caregiver, and so forth. And what we found, our clients found value in, is that number one, it was a self-selecting tool. Those that didn't want to answer 5 questions weren't really interested in that organization or that job. It's because they could hit apply, 30 companies in 30 seconds. But it also provided them a competitive advantage. It's a highly coveted market for caregivers. But it provided those recruiters with a competitive advantage, a more personal interview, as opposed to just a regurgitation of what your application was. So it gave them a sense of belonging to that organization. And then from there, we found out that it was starting to be used more internally. So, and from the standpoint of mergers and acquisitions, bringing together multiple cultures and trying to ascertain what are the different cultures and subcultures within divisions. Because we, through Millimatch, we objectively measure behavior, and from behavior derives culture. So with that, when you can measure individual behaviors, then you can use it for human capital architecture. Understanding your teams. We usually, first thing that we do is take a benchmark, of teams. Here are the dynamics of it. From there, if you understand the dynamics of the individuals that make up teams, make up divisions, make up a company, then you can, we work with third-party consulting firms, change management firms on behalf of our clients. Then they can start, number one, putting in customized interventions, programs to take and enhance the culture and the behavior, and also use it for team restructuring, things of that nature. So at the ultimate end of this, our clients find value in Millimatch and its technology in measuring a culture objectively, which leads to the two most important things. You mentioned about the most important asset are your people. So the two things that our clients focus on are retention and productivity. And through behavior, you can measure those things to take and put in proactive interventions.
Eric, how did the start of Millimatch occur? Now, how did you meet Manu?
It's interesting. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I was exiting my last company, and I was introduced to him by a mutual friend. And he started telling me about the technology. I was skeptical, and I said, "No, this is witchcraft. This is just another artificial intelligence picking out words, or it's I made the mistake of saying it's just another personality test." And he quickly corrected me. This has nothing to do with personality. It's all about behavior. So he said, "I'll prove it to you." And he said, "Pick a sport, any sport that you think is easy, that you don't particularly care for." And I said, "That's easy, curling." I said, and he says, "Okay, let me give you a scenario. The position is a curling coach." I said, "Okay." He says, "And it pays $1 million a year." Okay. He said, "I'm just going to ask you two questions and just want you to take and type out the answers. Okay. Number one, why do you want to become a curling coach? And number two, what inspired you about the sport of curling?" But this is easy. So I just made up stuff. I've always loved curling. Ever since I was a little boy, I wanted to be a curling coach. And so immediately ran it through the algorithm. And this is all done real time. Okay. And he came back, and he's on a scale of 100. I scored a 38. Okay. And I said, "How can I said all the right things?" And he started telling me, he goes, "What the algorithm is measuring is your attitude, aptitude, and interest towards curling specifically." And I said, "Nah, it's just a fluke." Okay. So he said, "Okay, fine." He goes, "I'll give you a couple of days. Answer the questions again." So I Googled everything. I didn't realize that curling has groupies, followers, fan base, and the Curling Hall of Fame and everything else. And I put down a mini novel of why I wanted to be a curling coach and what inspires me about curling. He ran it through the algorithm. 24. So how did I do even worse? I said everything. He says, "It's looking for patterns." Okay. You are trying to write what you think I want to hear, and your patterns are all over the place. So once again, by trying to game it, it's picking up on your attitude, aptitude, and interest as represented by 24 behavioral attributes. But fine. Hey, what can we do with this? And what's interesting, he said, I've been doing a lot of work in assisted living facilities. I'd like you to carry this through. And so we started out in home care. And it was kind of personal to me because I had a mother that was going through in home care. And the frustration is that we went through 3 agencies, 8 caregivers, okay, until we lucked out and found the right one. Well, if I would have had Millimatch, I could have matched my mother's needs with the qualities of the caregiver. And when I say the qualities of the caregiver, such things as social intelligence and so forth and so on. And we found that effective. And I saw the merits of it. And I saw that this was finally an opportunity to start a company to where I could help people and organizations help their individuals realize their potential by matching them to the right role, the right position, and the right team.
You mentioned the home care. I know that one of the type of companies you helped was a large home addiction center. What did you do with them?
That's one of our first and largest clients. So they're in multiple states and they're in-home addiction recovery. It's a 12-month program. We were approached by them and saying, we have this problem, is that we understand that certain teams are very effective with certain patients, but we can't put our finger on it. We can't replicate it. Can you use Millimatch technology to assemble the right teams and then apply that with understanding what are the needs of that particular patient? So we did. So what they were looking for is predictable outcomes, predictable success for that 12-month treatment. And understanding that patients predicated on age, male, female, what they were addicted to, and also their behavior matches perfectly with the team. So we did team architecture, assembling various teams and with their individual behaviors, making sure that with that specific role is that they had the perfect match to that patient. It's usually a team of 5 people that are assigned to a patient. And from there, we started working with other corporations. One of my other clients is a large software development company in fintech. And they've acquired several companies. And what we found a lot with our current clients in this economy is that they're doing reductions in forces and downsizing. So this company was no different. They had to take and downsize. It was one particular division, a new executive officer, and they were looking to, who do I keep? And then, but more importantly, if I let this person go, what is it going to do to my team from a productivity standpoint? If I choose right, things will be fine. If I choose wrong, it'll have a cataclysmic effect. And then from measuring all these individuals, ranging from VPs to directors and all that, is that this person finally understood how to increase productivity by re-architecting the teams. And retention is one of those things. So when you cure retention and productivity, it has other benefits, morale, company reputation, things of that nature.
Eric, who's an ideal profile of a company that should be using Millimatch?
A company that is, that's a very, very good question that I get asked. A company that's not satisfied with where they are right now, the status quo. They want to grow. A company that is focused on improving their culture, improving retention, and improving productivity. A
Is
company
there
that really
so-
says that they invest, they understand their most important asset and their costliest asset are their people, and they want to invest in them.
is there a minimum size of staff that it makes sense for?
Um, I'll tell you from my experience is that companies that are maybe under 100 people is that the leadership feel that they know their people. Okay, so they don't need an objective measurement, but they do utilize Millimatch from a recruiting standpoint or maybe a promotion standpoint. Um, Anything north of that, the larger it is, the more important it becomes to have those objective measurements and measure your culture and to put in various actions and interventions to improve that.
I'm wondering, I'm sure pricing varies depending on how the company uses it, but it seems like since it's a tool that most people have not used and not deployed, how did you decide and come up with pricing model for this?
First of all, Millimatch is not you take it one time and you're done with it. Okay, like a personality test, and we know those, they're very good, but this is not what we're doing. We price it based on what the scope is, and initially there's one price to go in and do a benchmark. We either do a division, we'll do the divisions and so forth. Okay. And then from there, I told you behavior is dynamic. So what makes Millimatch special is that we also conduct what we call rhythm assessments. Okay. You have a benchmark, but then again, 90 days later, from that benchmark, you put in various interactions, either with third party or internally to improve things. We do a rhythm assessment, not the same 5 questions in a different format, but we measure whether that's been effective or not, progress. And we measure that from the individual level as well as aggregating it up. So we measure that over the course of a year. So not only can we validate for the third-party companies, helping them customize their approach, but also validating the effectiveness of that, but we can see improvement over time. And we just, depending on the size and the scope, put it in a kind of an annual fee for that. We don't have any, it's not COTS, commercial off the shelf. The technology is unique and special, and each one of our clients, we utilize it in so many ways. It's like a hammer. You know, you can crack walnuts with it, or you can build a house. Very effective, but can be used in different ways.
How do you, I'm curious, you have a really interesting background of starting companies, also working at Microsoft for many years and other companies. I'm wondering, from your board, how did you assemble your board and some of the people on the board as, to advise and make sure everything was going in the right direction with the company?
So this is number 6 for me. So I can tell you, I've learned a lot from boards. In my early days, first company I started was in 1999. This is back after Microsoft and leaving Redmond. And before that, it was Washington, D.C. But I learned—
That was the radiology software?
No, I was in Washington, D.C., straight out of college, and I started with this little small consulting firm called the Advisory Board Company. And I was employee number 46, and we were in a townhouse on Capitol Hill. Well, the Advisory Board Company grew and grew and grew, went split into 2 divisions, went public. And matter of fact, one of the people that I worked with who came to be the CEO is now the chief of staff for President Biden. So he came out of that institution. So getting back to the board is that I assembled people, and they're not necessarily investors. As a matter of fact, only one person on my board is an investor, shareholder. I mean, an investor in the company. They're all shareholders, but they each have unique skill sets, either in business development, in finance, or strategic operations or technology. So I didn't just ask people that were known quantities. It was people that I was either introduced to or I've known in business for quite a while and asked them. There wasn't one of them that said, "Great, I'll be on the board." It was a wait and see and a lot of discussions, and they're very active and involved. And I told them, I said, "Please come on the board, and here's what the company's about. You have to believe in the vision and the value of the company, and you have to be an active participant. Not only that, but I'm not looking for people that will just be yes men to everything that comes to the board. I want you to take and I serve the board and I serve the shareholders, and I want you to treat it as such." So they do hold me accountable, and they do. Sometimes they're very frank. You said you were going to do X, and you didn't do X. So,
What does an active participant look like? If someone's thinking, I really need to start a board for my company. You talked about some of the skill sets you looked at: business development, finance. So I'm wondering what other skill sets, but also how do you organize that? What, as far as meetings, or how do you have them participate?
well, the first criteria, to summarize what I was saying before, you want to assemble people that will challenge you and hold you accountable. Okay. So how do you organize that? Number one, look at what the present needs are and the future needs are of the company as aligned with the vision. Second is that I run and manage the company on OKRs. Okay. And understanding those things and having those set and concrete, and everybody understands them and what those objectives are, in addition to the weekly measurements that go against that, is half the battle there. I don't have a board that we assemble once a quarter and I provide them financials and, here's my vision and, all the feel good stuff. We meet, I speak with my board, individual board members, some of them once a week, some of them every other week. But I tell them the good, the bad, the ugly. And then we get into solution mode. So sometimes I have the right answers. Sometimes they have the answers for me. Sometimes we don't have the answer, but we will sit there and figure it out. So get people, if anybody was starting a company, get those individuals that are going to challenge you and hold you accountable.
What skill sets were you looking for? You mentioned business development, finance. What were the other ones that you wanted to make sure that your board members had?
When I say finance from the standpoint of financial strategy, okay? We're a SaaS company. There's a lot of strategy involved in that. And every entrepreneur, anybody that says that this is the last company and it's a company for life, I don't believe them. Like I always say, when I start a company, I don't know whether it's going to be a 2-year company or 5-year or a 10-year. The shareholders decide that. So financial strategy, okay, and looking at return for your shareholders. They didn't invest because they like you. They invest, number one, they share the vision. Number two, they're expecting a return on their investment. So financial strategy is number one. Number two is operational. And some of this comes from previous companies, but people that are knowledgeable in technology, using technology to get speed and lift on your company, and using technology as opposed to putting what I like to call butts in seats to solve problems and all that, with an eye towards excellent customer service and quality of your end product there. There's all kinds of communication tools and so forth. And also when it comes to development, agile development, and so forth. The other one is from a business development standpoint. Now, you notice I didn't say sales when I say business development. You can't be everything to everybody. And you asked me before, who does it fit into? Well, I can give you a general idea who it fits into, but I can also give you a long list of who it doesn't fit into also. So how do you position that? And how do you be the very best in a particular market? And understanding what that market is. And it's usually not where you can make the fastest and the greatest amount of revenues. I build companies from the standpoint is that I always have a product roadmap, is the vision. And it's not just my vision, it's the culmination of the people inside as well as the outside. And if I'm successful, and just like I have with my other companies, I only get through 25% of that roadmap and that vision. But it has a long pathway to it.
I'm curious, Eric, because with your company, I see so many different use cases. You mentioned from hiring, from culture to downsizing to, which hits a lot of different parts of the market and companies. And you mentioned the fintech company, and you mentioned home addiction centers. Where do you see the biggest growth opportunity for Millimatch?
Corporations, and whether it's manufacturing, software development, and software services, that's evident there. Education. Millimatch has done. We did a project in Kenya with a educational organization there that would take high school students and put them through a 2-year program in media. Okay. And we used Millimatch not to decide who comes into the program and not, but to take, and there were 6 degree programs, but to take and match them to that program, whether they knew they had the abilities or not, so that they could succeed. And then from there, Millimatch was used to match them to organizations for apprenticeships and internships. Another very interesting one that's in development right now with a partnership is in virtual reality educational experiences right now, using Millimatch's technology to not only customize the courses and the curriculum, but to also measure the individual student and how they're accelerating or not accelerating in specific programs and courses. That's one of the most fascinating areas right there. And I'm really intrigued with it because people accelerate at different levels. In school, but we're all taught, here's the curriculum for the 6th grade. Finish all that, you'll get to the 7th grade. What if you have a propensity towards science? Why can't you accelerate to others? So we can use Millimatch to understand, like I said, the attitude, aptitude, and interest of an individual relative to something.
So educational institutions could be using this.
charter schools, homeschools, any type of school.
It'd be interesting. People apply to Harvard and they run Millimash through the people who apply.
Yes. I've had people approach us on all kinds of things. I can't be everything to everybody, but there's certain areas that are not high on the list that the technology. I've had people approach me and wanting to use it as a black box to measure things, ferret out people, like a witch hunt within an organization, which I won't do. Another one is I get a lot of calls from people that are developing dating sites. Can you use the technology
Interesting.
there? Yeah, a lot of companies.
What do you tell them?
How do you want to use it? Not from the standpoint that I'm going to say, yeah, great, we're on board and all that. I stick to what Millimatch's mission is, and that's improving people's lives to have them to develop to their highest potential by being in the right positions and teams and so forth.
It's probably hard to stay disciplined. You get all these inquiries and there's a lot of interesting use cases that other people see. How do you stay disciplined in, well, let's not really, let's go that route or not go that route?
It's an exercise I've gone through with my board. It's an exercise I've always used, and it's an exercise I go through with my team. And that is, think of three circles. It's called the hedgehog concept. And but what can we be the best at? What can we be not good, but be the very best at? That's number one. And this is individually and collectively. Number two is, what are we passionate about? What am I passionate about? What do I get excited about every day? And what is it that drives me to work, 16, 18-hour days, 6 days a week? And the last one is, what's the economic engine to it? Can you make money on it? Can you grow revenues? Remember, at the end of the day, I work for shareholders and I work for a board. Those are my bosses. That's what keeps us focused and centered on this. Look, I have a soon-to-be 18-year-old daughter that understands what her dad does in the technology. So one of the things we can take, and that's part of the basis of the technology, it's what we call the red-blue line, so that I can take any text. And I do it for fun all the time with politicians. And you take the text and you run it through the algorithm there. And you can see from there where they're being honest. I'm just going to kind of, simplify this. Where they're being honest, where they're being dishonest, and where they're being conflicted. Okay? All from written text. And you can tell specifically from the very words and all that. Well, my daughter found out about this and she said, can I have the program so I can run all my friends' texts through that? Cannot. No,
I was thinking another use case, which is like you could sell this to dads all across America of someone who wants to date their daughter.
Yeah.
And run that through it, right?
Yeah. Well, the other thing is that, take all these dating sites and so forth. When they're communicating, you can run it through that and you can tell whether the other person's being genuine or dishonest or deceptive. So when she wanted to run her friends through it, what did you tell her? No. No. Because if I do it for you, your mom's going to do it to me. No. And that's a marriage limiting move.
I love it. So Eric, I have one last question. First of all, thanks for walking me through this and sharing everything. But I think there is a great use case for dads who I have 2 daughters, so I definitely want to run future. They're not old enough to date, but eventually I want that to run anything through someone who's communicating with them, wants to date them. But
I'm holding that in my back pocket.
okay, good. Last question. I want to point people to Millimatch. They can check it out. You go to milimatch.com to learn more and check out what they're doing there. My last question is just mentors. It's really, I love your mentality and philosophy around, especially you're really experienced. You have lots of companies, but you want to surround yourself with just great people, and you're, modest enough, like, I don't know everything and I need advisors for many reasons. So I'd love to hear some of your mentors throughout the years and maybe some of the best advice they've given you.
I have a lot of mentors, and there are people that have had the most impact on me, and I'll name a couple of them. One of them, a dear friend of mine, and matter of fact, he was the one that brought me on to one of the companies that we started, and his name is Ken Bloom. And Ken has been a senior executive with some of the most prestigious medical universities in the country, the most humble man, and but taught me quite a bit. And what I meant from that is he is an expert in communication, communicating the most complex things down to layman's terms, to where anybody can understand them. But he was also, I don't speak of him in past tense, he's still alive, but he's also great at being a leader. And he taught me the difference between being a leader and being a manager, two entirely different things. Another gentleman, Gene Thomas, who's a longtime friend of mine and was the CEO of my first company that I started, just personally taught me about perseverance. And we were set with so many obstacles, but he taught me that these are obstacles. They're meant to get around. You just have to think through them. So if there was anything that he taught me, is to expect the unexpected and have a plan for that. There have been numerous other people, but those are the two that stand out the most to me. I would say that everybody on my board is a mentor to me. They really, really are. My colleagues, I am surrounded by very, very talented people. And why they put up with me, I don't know, because they're a heck of a lot smarter than I am. But we work well together because we respect each other. And that was another thing also that I was taught by mentors. You don't have to be the most popular. You'll have to make decisions that cut against the grain, and it's not going to please everybody. But you gained people's respect by making the hard decisions, in addition to always being fair and honest. That's it. Things I want to learn at Microsoft. Okay, it was back in '95. It was cutthroat.
I love it. Eric, I want to be the first one to thank you. Everyone, check out millimatch.com. Learn more episodes of Inspired Insider. And thanks, Eric. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like $100 grand.